Hey guys, before we get into episode 71, I just wanted to have a little chat with you. I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you for the support on the podcast, on Instagram, on our coffee. It truly does mean the world to Will and I, and it continues to push us to want to put out more content for you guys to consume. Just to put a little context around this episode, Will and I had the opportunity to go back to our old university, the University of Western, to talk to the second year PT students as part of their business symposium. So that's put on by one of our professors, Daryl Yardley, who was also an episode on this podcast you guys should check out. He wanted us to come there and speak on what it was like starting a podcast, why we did it, the importance of social media in our profession, and a lot of those things. So we went over there, we brought the OG blend, we gave them coffee, and we had a couple of them on the podcast as we did a live podcast in front of the class. This was a pretty surreal opportunity for Will and I, as we've been, doing this for a little over a year now. We didn't really have any expectations when we started, and to be back in the room that we sat just over a year ago was pretty cool. And, we always wanted to give back and connect to the students and help take what we're learning and translate it to them. So this was a great opportunity, guys. We hope you really enjoy it. If you like this episode, please head over to iTunes, subscribe, drop us a review, and share it with one other person. Cheers, guys. Enjoy. Welcome to the Movement PT Coffee Cast, where we sit down and talk about physical therapy, health, and whatever else comes to mind during our coffee-infused conversations. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Movement PT Coffee Cast. My name's Dalton, and with me, as always, is my beautifully bearded friend, William. William, how are we doing today?
Couldn't be better, man. I like how Daryl started the intro with, this isn't going to be anything sophisticated.
that defines us perfectly, as we sit here. I'm just glad I get to see you in the flesh, man.
I know.
I miss you.
Unbeknownst to maybe everybody here, it doesn't happen that often these days, unlike when we started here at Western not too long ago.
Yeah. So what we're going to be doing today, for our audience that's listening, we're doing a live podcast at the University of Western, our old physiotherapy school. So guys, let's hear it. Bring some noise. Go on. Good. Welcome. So basically, just to set some context for the listeners and for you guys, what we're going to do today is we're going to talk a little bit about why we started the PT Coffee Cast, how it got going, why we think social is important for students and for everyone else in the physiotherapy profession. And then we'll get you guys to come down here and ask a couple questions, and we'll do our best to try to give you an answer. So I'm Dalton, this is Will. So let's just kick it off. Will, do you want to kick it off of the story of how we started the podcast?
Yeah, sure. I think I can give it a try.
Take it away.
Basically, we were just students, and me and Dalton were friends kind of like from early on in the program, and we were on social media kind of and listening to podcasts and kind of just seeing, what was out there. And so we used to get together a lot and drink a lot of coffee. And that kind of led to this idea that we would start a podcast and make it coffee infused. So that was kind of how we started.
Yeah, and the idea was we were kind of in the podcast space, like listening, and we saw a little bit of like a lack of maybe physio presence. I don't know if that was just us not seeing anything. There probably was some stuff out there. But what we wanted to do is we wanted to come from a student perspective, because we were in school just like you guys were, getting all this information, wondering how the hell am I supposed to know all this stuff? And then you're getting information from outside of school on like research or physio, like on Instagram, different things. So we were just trying to connect the gap between what we were learning in school and then what was starting to develop in clinical practice. And we just wanted really an excuse to talk to people that we thought were cool. So we thought if we started this platform, it would just give us an opportunity to reach out to those people and have an excuse to have them come and talk to us. And being students at the time, it was like, oh, please help us. Like, we're students. We need you. So we kind of used that and leveraged that to get some pretty cool guests that we've had on the show so far. So that's kind of how it got started. The reason why we continue to do it today is that as it started going, it started turning into something that we never really expected. Like same with our Instagram platform. We just started putting out random videos with exercise and started connecting with people. And it kind of blew up a little bit. We got some followers. And so we just kind of kept rolling with it. And we started to realize, I think, how much of an impact we could have as students in school on the profession, when that sometimes you feel like you don't really have an impact because you're kind of just sitting here, you're taking all this information, you want to get out there and do something. So we saw it as an avenue to be able to have an impact on the profession, at the same time bringing information to the public, because I think, as we know, Instagram, social media, podcasting is starting to become very popular. And I think it's an opportunity for us to show our profession, show what our profession can do for the public.
And that was a big thing I think we realized, is that you don't have to wait in order to make an impact. Like when we were students, like you can go and reach out to people and try to have an impact right away. And that's going to get you to learn a lot of different things, you know, because we kind of realized we reach out, nobody would say no, you know, to coming on the podcast. And when we had these people on the podcast, we also realized, well, you know, these people are much smarter than us. They've been practicing for a long time. So we had to do a lot of research to gather the questions, to kind of like think of that stuff. So it helped develop our mindset and critical thinking when we were even in school.
Yeah, so maybe to just transition a little bit into why just we think I personally think everyone should be on these social platforms right now. What we kind of learned over the last almost 2 years that we've been doing this, 3 things kind of came to mind. Like, it's an avenue for you to network. So literally everything that me and Will are doing right now, like our job, this podcast, like everything that we're doing in the physio space was because of through our Instagram page. So I got a job through my Instagram page. I got an opportunity to be a strength and conditioning coach through the Instagram page. The podcast, the coffee avenue, was all through our Instagram page. So like, as a networking tool, it's so powerful, and it doesn't mean that you have to sit there and put content out. So like, that's one thing I think people feel pressured that, oh, I got to put these videos out, or I got to put exercise. You don't have to do that. I would just say make a page that's specifically towards like physio, and start following people in the space, start connecting. If there's an avenue that you like just reach out to someone and ask them a question. Hey, what do you think about this? And like, that just starts to network, and you can meet people from all over the world doing that. Another one is like, you learn yourself. So if you are posting content on Instagram, it's an education tool for you, because you have to be critical with what you're putting out there. I mean, you can't just throw random stuff out there without, you know, doing research or having some evidence-based stuff. So it kind of makes you have to look into things before you just start putting content or just saying things. What kind of keeps you in check when you move into practice, as we're starting to realize now, as like almost a year in, that you need to constantly stay up to date, constantly learn, continue to develop your skills. Mm-hmm. And then I think lastly, the third one would just be educating the public. I think there's a big identity problem within the physiotherapy profession with what we do. And so being able to create your own avenue to tell the public what we do is great. And I think there's a lot of people on these platforms, especially as the younger generation starts to come up. So I think it's a great opportunity for us to also educate the public.
Yeah, and the cool thing that we've sort of realized is it's given us the opportunity to learn other things other than just physiotherapy too. You know, for myself, like, it's led me to learn a little bit about graphic design, you know, which has gotten me some other opportunities other than just being a physiotherapist. I think being a physiotherapist is great. There's nothing wrong with it. But the reality is there's a lot of burnout in our profession. So if you have other things that you like doing, don't stop yourself from kind of pursuing those interests, right? On another note, like, you know, we obviously made the coffee, right? That was something we had a big goal in, and we knew nothing about business. We still don't really know that much about business.
You can only learn so much from Daryl.
Yeah, you can. But it's forced us to learn those things and, you know, become acclimated with different sorts of areas.
Yeah, so just to wrap up like our part before we bring some people down to have questions, the one thing I would say, and this is just me personally, is like, if you have an interest in something that's not, let's just say, traditional physiotherapy care, whether that be like working in a hospital, working in an outpatient clinic, if you have some other ideas or things that you're passionate about, don't stop going after those things, and use your physiotherapy degree as an avenue to create that in what you want. I think the physiotherapy degree is very dynamic. It allows you to work in many different areas, which is awesome. So don't just kind of limit yourself because it's what's always been done. And not that there's anything wrong with just working at a hospital or working in a clinic or whatever. If that's what you're passionate about and that's what you want to do, go for it. But if you have something else that you're thinking in your head and you're like, oh, I'd like to do this or I'd like to create this, don't be afraid to put yourself out there and start it, because if you do, you'll be surprised at how things will start to come together. And you can do a lot of different things. So that would just be my last little thing before we kind of transition into the questioning period. So, Daryl, we got a beer? All right. Come on down.
We're going to pour you guys some coffee here.
Yeah, we're going to get some nice coffee. All right. So what we'll have you guys do is we'll have you guys introduce yourself, so name, and then so you're all in second year, right? So, okay, so let's just have your name, and then we'll have you guys do a question.
Cool. Hey, guys, my name is Jordan.
And I'm Brendan.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Do you guys subscribe to the Pizza Podcast?
We do.
I do. Yeah.
Oh, yes. There we go.
I listened to one at the gym this morning, actually.
Oh, nice.
Oh, yeah?
Which one?
With Taylor Eckel.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, cool.
Amazing.
Yeah, we've had her on twice.
That's what you
she's
said this
She's
morning.
also a student. Also a student.
Yeah, so that was kind of cool.
Sweet.
I guess I can start off. Just thinking about some of the guests you guys have had on your show. Is there anyone in particular or a conversation in particular that stands out in your mind as being really influential or meaningful to you guys in your practice?
You want to go first?
I have to think about that for a second, I think.
Okay. I feel like I should say Daryl, but no.
Well, I mean, for me, getting to interview Dave Walton was awesome, because he's a professor here. And he was someone that really spoke to me when we were doing, like, the classes and stuff, right? So his pain science class was huge for me. And getting to just sit there for an hour, it's just us three, and kind of, like, ask him any questions we wanted, right? That was pretty huge for me. But, I mean, there's been so many.
Yeah, we've had a lot of cool guests. I think one that just comes to my mind, Dr. Ellie Summers. We had her on the podcast. She's a physiotherapist out of the Seattle area. She's very passionate, very fiery, but she's doing a lot of stuff for women athletes in the space, and she's super passionate about that. So to kind of hear her talk about just what she's really excited about, and again, kind of how I talked about creating your own avenue or space, she's doing that with her practice and her Instagram page. So it's kind of cool to see that. So that was definitely one of my favorite episodes.
The other cool one was, I don't know if any of you guys know Emma Jack, but she's a physio here in London. She does press play physio. And way back in the day, we kind of found her on social media, and we reached out to her. She does like Pilates with her physio. And we reached out to her, and she actually came to my apartment, and it was like the three of us. And it was super cool. That one was huge for me because she's gone from there where she was working at Reactive Physio, and she's literally opened up her own practice here in London. So we've gotten to know her over that period, and so that's been cool because we've seen the kind of whole process, of her development and stuff.
Really cool.
Yeah.
Cool. So I guess for my question is, guys, as you started this coming out of second year and started kind of establishing your brand and building it, what was like the biggest learning experience for you that you took away within those like first 6 months that you could like kind of provide to like us as students coming out of that field as well?
So say like in terms of like trying to go into
just building your brand and establishing yourselves, and what was kind of like this aha moment in terms of like your trajectory on like, okay, we maybe did this, and what was like a big learning experience that may have kind of driven that platform to where you guys are now?
Yeah, that's a good question. For me, I think what the aha moment was kind of just this idea of like people are way more open to you than you think, and if you just start asking and start doing, things start to just happen. Like it's kind of hard to explain, but like if you start to put action towards what you want to do, so like whether that be start a brand or get a specific job or whatever it is, if you just start doing it and reaching out and put yourself out there, even though like you don't really know what you're doing, like you're a student or you're worried and all that kind of stuff, you'll start to create your own opportunities. And I just started seeing these things, like we would reach out to someone on a podcast and we'd connect them. Oh, that's cool. They're from Boston, and they're doing like the Level Up initiative. So now like we're part of that, and then like I got the opportunity to fly out to Boston and spend a week with them. Like those kind of things just started happening, and like if you would ask me that like before, I would have been like, "There's no way," right? Mm-hmm. So these things that you think are not capable of happening happen if you just start to put yourself out there and just do it.
Right.
If you don't start to create like motion or energy, nothing's gonna happen. You're just gonna stay stagnant. So that was probably my biggest like learning experience or takeaway from the first 6 months to a year of what we're doing. And it's kind of led to me not being afraid to do that now. And like we've done it and got shut down or had things not work out, and like it's cool. Like you just move on to the next thing because you know at some point something's gonna come up.
Right.
I don't think I'll add anything to that. I feel like I would say the same thing. Yeah.
Okay.
For sure.
Cool. Awesome.
You just got to go for it, you know?
And you can learn on the fly. I think one thing I would say Will's become amazing at is graphic design. And like everyone's like, how do you make your graphics? How do you make this? Like Will had no idea how to do it when we started. So just you know, you can YouTube or learn anything that you want. So you know, if there's really not an excuse. If you really want to do it, you'll do it.
Cool. Awesome.
Anything else?
I think kind of a follow-up question to that, I guess.
Yeah.
Do you guys suggest, or do you think it was more powerful to start like a new account and kind of a brand new, fresh brand, fresh page, or build off of something you had before or a personal account, I guess?
I don't know, because we only know from our experience, right? I think probably make something new. You know?
I mean, we did that, right? Because we partnered together. But I know people that just post on their personal account, and it started translating into something, and they just changed it over to like their business or brand account. I mean, it's totally up to you if you want to keep it separate from your personal life. You know, I mean, some people like that authenticity of like seeing the real person. So like that's a good thing too. So it's kind of all depends on what you really want to do.
Cool.
But I think the cool thing was we like coffee and we like training, right? So we made that our brand, right? So I think that's the cool thing is you can take yourself, you know, if that starts as just your personal brand and then grows, you just take what you're interested in and then you make that what you do, right?
Sweet.
Really.
All right, you guys want to leave your Instagram handles? You guys got anything for the people, or are you guys not on there yet?
I got nothing for the people.
All right.
No one wants to be bored.
No.
Nobody wants to be bored but my
If
Instagram
anyone
account.
wants to plug,
Thanks for
we're
having a
open
cup of
plugs.
coffee.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Boys, move on down. All right, so let's do name, and then we'll drop the question.
Sure. My name's Julian. I guess I was just listening to your inaugural podcast like last night, actually.
Oh, nice.
Wow.
Yeah,
Jesus.
I went way back.
Oh, God.
Audio quality wasn't the best.
Oh, man. Nope.
No disagreements there, yeah.
I guess my biggest question was you mentioned how you learned a certain subset of things in school, and it was kind of expressed to you as like law, right? Mm-hmm. And then as you got out on your own and you started researching your own things and looking out into the extended physio universe by yourself, you realized that there was a ton of things that you didn't learn in school, but you found very useful out there, right? Mm-hmm. So my question is, how do you kind of dissociate from that dogmatic philosophy that is ingrained in you in school and then try to incorporate some of the things that you learn outside of that? Just for example, like PFPS, like hammer the glute med is what you learn in school, but now there's a lot of studies coming out that say, you know, general freeform exercise and activity modification works just as well as specific targeted exercises.
That's a very difficult, nuanced question, but I think, you know, you have to trust yourself and, you know, be confident in your learning, right? And like, and be critical, right? Because what you know now might still develop, right? So if you're approaching, you know, somebody else who maybe doesn't hold your belief, I think going in there with the mindset of just like changing their mind immediately probably isn't going to go very well, right? So yeah, you just have to kind of like be confident in what you know and seek to learn from others as well, even if they don't hold the same opinion as yours.
Yeah, and like the school and like what you're learning outside, like I would just say be critical and don't just take everything that someone tells you for word. Like do your own research. That's kind of what led us to what we started learning was like we were hearing these things and we were like, okay, that makes sense. But then you're like doing some other learning, you're like, this is like completely opposite of what's being said here. And it's not like what's right, what's wrong. It's like, okay, how do we take this information critically, think use that information and then take away what matters from each section. Because I don't think nothing matters from what you learn in school, and not everything that you learn outside of school isn't gospel either, because there's a lot of shit out there that's not good as well, right? So I think it's good because it challenges you to be critical, and when you get out into practice, that's all it is. It's all critical thinking.
You're on your own,
You
right?
got no one, and you're trying to take in what this person's telling you, and it's usually not easy, and you got to kind of take what you've learned and kind of blend it together, and then try to come up with the best appropriate solution for that person in front of you.
Cool. Thanks.
Yeah, my name's Kyle. Kind of have a similar type question, but I remember listening to you guys back when you were in second year and you're kind of encountering this new information, kind of going through this belief and value change. I think a lot of us are kind of in a similar position in our second year as well. And I think it's kind of in line with the new Level Up podcast of like new grad nihilism. But essentially, like, I think it's easy to fall into that trap, like getting out, just based on some of the information you hear out there. I'm just wondering how you guys kind of reconciled those two, and what was it like for you, like when you first got out into practice, kind of knowing all that new stuff?
Yeah, that's a good question too. I think we started to have that forming our new beliefs in our last year, going into our last year of physio school. So we were already thinking a little bit different than what was like being traditionally like put into our heads. So like we've been taking in a lot of information, interviewing people, getting this different stuff. So I think we started to apply it in our last clinical placement. So when we got out into practice, we were already kind of on board with biopsychosocial approach and like being, more focused on behavior modification, behavior change, and like trying to treat the person in front of you. And there's more than just, the symptoms and the diagnosis and all that kind of stuff. So I think we had that already. So it wasn't as big of a shock to us necessarily when we got out, because we were already practicing it. But then again, it's not easy, and it's still not easy to try and treat that way. You know what I mean? Because people are complicated and hard, and it's not as black and white as it gets made out to be.
But at the same time, like, you're probably learning it earlier than even we did, and people said that
guys like you
about us even before us.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like, I don't think you need to be too worried. Like, you know a lot, and I just kind of am like, thank God I looked into this stuff.
Yeah.
Because when you get in and you're seeing patients, you realize how important understanding, the broad picture is immediately. When you're like already looking into it, you're like, oh yeah, shit, like I'm glad I looked into this stuff now,
Yeah, it makes sense.
Sweet. Thanks,
kind
guys.
of follow-up question if it's
Let's
possible.
get. We have one. Is she the last one here? Let's have her ask her question. I think we're kind of coming up on time.
Gotcha.
Great.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me, guys. I'm Victoria. Nice to meet you.
nice to meet you, Victoria.
Hello. Hi. And just a fangirl moment. It's really great to be a part of this. So thanks for coming, guys.
Well,
And-
appreciate it.
and
Really
I s-
appreciate it.
Thank you. And I see that you guys have a great following on Instagram, and you're building this great community. What are your top 3 tips on cultivating a community on Instagram?
Ooh. My number one would be like completely like just be authentic. Don't go out trying to find followers. Like, an authentic is a word that gets thrown around a lot, but don't do it for followers. Do it for you and like what you're trying to put out there. Because if you get caught up in all that, then you're gonna start being like, oh, I gotta post this, I gotta post that, and I gotta make sure like I'm commenting, and it can get crazy and it becomes fake almost. And I'm sure you can see that on Instagram, right? So for number one would be make sure you know what your values are and what you want to get out before you start, and then just be you and just put it out. Don't try to chase like blowing up on Instagram, because it's hard. It's not even now, it's harder than it's ever been. So don't use that as like your main goal, I think.
Yeah, and like even if you're small, you never know who you're gonna reach, right? Like, social media is not limited to London, Ontario. So like you might get some random person from like who knows where, Dubai, and they're like, oh, your post like really helped me out when I was doing this, right? So I think like if you're striving to like reach people and have an impact, then you're probably more likely to be, successful and to do it longer.
Yeah, and last one would be consistent. If you're really trying to build a brand, be consistent. We posted one post every day for a year. So like if you're really looking to build people and build a community, then you have to be consistent on Instagram, if that's where you're going to be, or Facebook or podcast or whatever it is.
Okay, nice. And I like that you guys really affirmed sharing about our personal life as well as physio all together in one account. If you guys like to check out my account as well, it's Vicky K _physio student.
Woo!
Very
Nice.
original.
Yeah.
Shout out.
Follow her now.
Thanks, guys.
Awesome. Cool. Daryl, are we good? Like, we running up on time here?
Yeah.
Okay.
You just end up like you normally do.
Just wrap it up.
Yeah, how you guys would do it on the cast.
Okay.
All right.
All right, guys. Thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate it. If you want to follow us on Instagram, so you better all be following us on Instagram at the VMTPTs. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook. Head over to iTunes and subscribe to our podcast, PT Coffee Cast. Drop us a review and a rating. It really helps our podcast kind of grow. And then if you enjoyed this episode, or if you've enjoyed any other episode that you've listened to, just share it with one other person. We'd really appreciate it. And one last plug, if you want OG Blend, go to our Instagram page, click the link in the bio, take you to the website. You can buy it. We'll also put it in the show notes. Yeah, that's all we got. Will, anything?
No, I think that was the most fun I've ever had on a podcast. So.
All right. Also, we'd like to thank Daryl for having us here. We really do appreciate it. Daryl's done a lot for us. He pushed us to kind of look outside the box, which also led to a lot of the opportunities that we have now. So, Daryl, thank you. Yeah, guys, thank you. Have a great day. Peace.